lonely lumberjack paid $2 for a woman with a sack on her head. What happened next shocked everyone. The forest stretched for miles, its green canopy almost blocking out the pale sun. The only sounds were the rustling of leaves, the distant calls of birds, and the sharp crack of wood splitting as a lone lumberjack swung his axe. He moved with the rhythm of the forest, each strike precise, each step careful on the uneven ground. His name was Jonah, and he had lived on this remote planet for years, far from the bustling colonies of human civilization. Most people would call him lonely, but he preferred quiet. Out here, the trees spoke in a language only he could understand, and the wind carried stories of places no human had ever visited. Jonah wiped the sweat from his forehead. His shirt, made of thick, rough material, was damp with effort. His muscles ached, but he loved this work. It grounded him, chopping trees, hauling logs, and surviving in the wilderness. This was his life. Yet as much as he loved it, a small part of him ached too. Loneliness was a quiet companion, following him even into the deepest parts of the forest. He paused to catch his breath, wiping the sweat again. That's when he saw movement at the edge of the clearing. A figure was stumbling toward him, slow and awkward, carrying a heavy sack over their head. Jonah froze. Out here, in a forest so far from civilization, strangers were rare. "Hello?" Jonah called, his voice steady but cautious. The figure stopped and tilted their head, as if confused. Then, without a word, the person collapsed slightly under the weight of the sack. Jonah frowned. Something was not right. Before he could approach, a small hovercraft, barely bigger than a cart, appeared from behind the trees. 3 beings stepped out. They were aliens, unlike anything Jonah had ever seen. Their skin shimmered slightly under the sunlight, and their eyes glowed with colors that made Jonah blink. "You want this one?" one of them said, their voice melodic but sharp, almost like the hum of a strange instrument. Jonah frowned. What do you mean?" The alien pointed to the person with the sack. "The human or near human? Cheap price."
"Only 2 credits. 2 credits."
Jonah blinked. He had expected strange travelers, maybe traders of rare goods. But 2 credits for a person? And not just any person. A person hidden under a sack? His heart skipped a beat. A mix of curiosity, fear, and something else. You want me to buy them?" Jonah asked, unsure. "Yes, 2 credits. Take it or leave it. No questions," the alien said, then gestured toward the hovercraft. "Your choice, human lumberjack." Jonah's mind raced. He glanced at the figure under the sack. Their hands were bound loosely, but there was no sign of panic. Still, something about the way the figure shifted, even under the heavy covering, made Jonah uneasy. Why would anyone sell a person for almost nothing? His instincts shouted caution, but a quiet part of him, the part that had spent years alone, chopping wood, listening to the forest, felt something else. Compassion, responsibility, curiosity. Jonah reached into his pouch and pulled out a small pouch of credits. 2 credits. He laid them carefully on the ground. "All right," he said, his voice firm. "I'll take them." The aliens did not move fast. One of them tilted its head, watching him with those glowing eyes. Then, as if satisfied, they stepped back. The figure under the sack was handed to him, careful but firm. Jonah's hands were rough, calloused from years of work, but he treated the person gently. He could feel the tension in their body, a mixture of fear and resignation. He led them back toward his cabin. a small wooden structure built on a hill overlooking the forest. The journey was quiet, except for the crunch of leaves underfoot and the occasional bird cry. Jonah kept glancing at the figure, trying to sense something, anything, about them. When they reached the cabin, Jonah set the figure down gently. He knelt and tugged lightly at the sack, just enough to see a hint of what lay beneath. A lock of hair, dark and straight, peeked out. Jonah froze for a moment. It was real. This was a person, a living, breathing being.
"Hey," Jonah said softly. "It's okay."
"I'm not going to hurt you," the figure shifted, tilting their head slightly. A faint hum of acknowledgement came from beneath the sack. Jonah's heart raced. They were alive, yes, but there was more. Something about them felt unusual. He returned to the credits, careful to place them in a small wooden box. The aliens had vanished, leaving no trace but the scent of ozone and something metallic in the air. Jonah sighed and turned back to the figure. "All right," he said. "Let's get this sack off, okay?" He reached for the ties, loosening them carefully. The figure did not resist, though the tension in their body was visible. Jonah pulled the sack gently over their head, and then he froze. Under the sack was not the face of a simple stranger. It was alien, yes, but also strangely familiar, almost human in structure, but with features that seemed impossible. Their eyes were larger, glimmering like molten gold in the dim light of the cabin. Their skin shimmered faintly, almost like it held a soft inner light. Their hair was dark and flowed like liquid, and there was an elegance in their posture that made Jonah step back in awe. The figure blinked slowly, meeting his gaze. Jonah felt a chill. "You are not from here," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. The figure tilted their heads slightly, and though they did not speak, Jonah could sense a faint aura of intelligence, of awareness far beyond his own. He realized this was no ordinary person. "Why were you in that sack?" Jonah asked, trying to keep his voice steady. The figure shook their head slightly, then raised a hand and touched Jonah's arm. The touch was soft, electric almost, and Jonah felt a strange warmth spread through him. Then, slowly, they pointed to the window. Then, outside. Jonah frowned. He looked out and saw the forest, dense and green, stretching endlessly. The figure was trying to communicate something important, but he didn't understand what. He stepped back and ran a hand through his hair. He had lived a simple life, far from cities, politics, and alien intrigue. But now, suddenly, the quiet forest seemed full of possibilities, dangers, and secrets he could not even begin to guess. Jonah decided to give them water and food first. The figure accepted quietly, their movements precise and careful. As they ate, Jonah watched, trying to learn, to understand. He had no idea that the tiny act of kindness, paying 2 credits, would set off events that could shake the very edge of the galaxy. Hours passed. The woman, he would call them that for now, though he did not know her name, remained quiet, observing everything. Their eyes seemed to absorb not only the cabin but the forest beyond, as if they could sense things no human could. Jonah's curiosity grew. What had she survived? Why was she sold for almost nothing? That night, Jonah lit a small fire and sat across from her. He felt uneasy, yet strangely hopeful. "You can trust me," he said softly. "I don't know who you are, but you're safe here. For now." The figure tilted their heads slightly, almost as if considering his words. Then, for the first time, a soft hum of sound escaped their throat, a sound that felt like a wordless promise. a connection forming between them. Outside, the wind whispered through the trees, carrying hints of things unseen, distant planets, stars beyond the forest canopy, and the faint hum of alien ships far above in orbit. Jonah did not know it yet, but his simple life, the life of a lonely human lumberjack, was about to be thrust into a galaxy of secrets, danger, and awe-inspiring revelation. For now, though, there was only the fire, the quiet forest, and the strange alien before him. And somewhere deep in his chest, Jonah felt the spark of something he had not felt in years: hope, curiosity, and the thrill of the unknown. He did not know her name. He did not know her story. But he knew this. This encounter would change everything. And somewhere, far beyond the forest, others were watching. Their glowing eyes, hidden sensors, and silent ships marked them as hunters and seekers. They would not be content until the woman was returned or destroyed. But Jonah, simple human lumberjack, was about to show the galaxy a truth it often forgot. Humans are unpredictable, resourceful, and fearless when it matters most. Tonight, a lonely man had bought a mystery for 2 credits. Tomorrow, the galaxy would learn that even a simple human could shake the stars. The night was deep and quiet. Outside Jonah's small cabin, the forest breathed under the pale moonlight. Shadows stretched long between the trees, and the wind carried a faint, earthy scent. Inside, the fire flickered softly, casting golden light on the rough wooden walls. Jonah sat across from the woman he had bought for 2 credits, still uncertain about what she truly was. She had not spoken a word since he removed the sack, but her presence filled the room with a quiet intensity. Her eyes, golden and glowing faintly in the firelight, followed his every move. Jonah felt the weight of her gaze, not threatening, but knowing. He realized she was far more intelligent than any human he had met. Yet, despite the strangeness, he felt an unexpected connection forming, a silent understanding between them. Jonah decided to try something simple. He pulled out a piece of bread from his pack and offered it to her. She looked at it, hesitated, then reached out with delicate fingers, taking it carefully. The motion was precise, almost ritualistic, as if she had been trained to move with care and grace. Jonah watched, fascinated.
"You must be hungry," he said softly. "You've been through..."
Something. I don't know what, but you're safe here. The woman tilted her head slightly, then, for the first time, made a soft sound. It was not a word, but a tone, musical and low. Jonah frowned. He did not understand her language, but the tone felt like an answer. He leaned closer. I don't understand your words, but I'll learn. I want to help you. She blinked slowly, her eyes reflecting the fire. Then she raised her hand and traced a symbol in the air, a pattern of lines and curves. Jonah squinted. It glowed faintly, almost like a hologram, but dim and fragile. He recognized nothing, yet he felt a strange warmth in his chest. It was like a message, a signal of intelligence beyond his world. Jonah sat back, rubbing his chin. He had lived among humans and aliens on the fringes of civilized space, but nothing prepared him for this. He realized that he had stumbled upon someone extraordinary, someone who could change everything he knew about the galaxy. The next morning, Jonah woke before dawn. The woman was sitting by the small window, looking out into the forest. He watched her silently, noting the way she moved, careful, deliberate, aware of every detail. There was a patience and intelligence that human eyes rarely held, a sharpness that suggested she had survived dangers most humans could not imagine. Jonah approached slowly. I should give you a name, he said. It will be easier than just, ah. The woman turned toward him, blinking. Jonah searched her eyes, trying to find a clue. Then he smiled gently. How about Lyra? Her eyes widened slightly at the sound of the name. She did not speak, but she repeated the sound softly, almost like a whisper. Lyra. Jonah nodded. That would be her name for now. Over the next few days, Jonah and Lyra settled into a rhythm. He taught her how to chop wood, how to move quietly through the forest, and how to use simple tools. She learned quickly, her reflexes and intelligence making her an exceptional student. Jonah was impressed. In turn, Lyra showed signs of abilities he could not explain. She could sense dangers before they happened, a branch snapping in the distance, a small animal hiding nearby, and react with incredible speed and precision. Jonah realized that she was not just intelligent, but enhanced in ways humans rarely were. One afternoon, while stacking logs near the cabin, a sudden noise startled them. A shadow moved swiftly through the trees. Jonah's hand went to his axe. But before he could react, Lyra had already positioned herself between him and the threat. Her eyes glowed faintly, and the shadow froze, as if the forest itself obeyed her command. It was a small group of alien traders, different from the ones who had sold her. They moved cautiously, scanning the area. Jonah's heart raced. He realized immediately that Lyra was in danger. "They've come for her," he whispered, gripping his axe tightly. "They want her back." Lyra stepped forward, her movements fluid, her eyes sharp. She raised a hand, and the aliens froze mid-step, confused. Jonah's jaw dropped. He had never seen anything like this. It was not brute strength. It was something else. Control, awareness, strategy. Ch, 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 ch. Ah. Lyra's presence alone seemed to give her an advantage, a command over space that humans rarely possessed. The aliens retreated slowly, but Jonah knew it was only a temporary reprieve. "We have to be ready," he said. "They will come back, and next time, they won't hesitate." That night, Jonah sat by the fire, thinking. He realized that buying Lyra for 2 credits had changed everything. His quiet life in the forest, the life of simplicity he cherished, was over. Now he was a guardian, responsible for someone far more important than he had ever imagined. Lyra, sitting opposite him, seemed to understand. She reached out and touched his hand gently. The warmth was electric, and Jonah felt a connection deeper than words could explain. It was trust, and perhaps even a beginning of friendship, or something more. As days passed, Jonah learned more about Lyra's story, though much remained a mystery. She had escaped a faction of alien rulers who treated her as a valuable asset, not a person. Her intelligence, her abilities, and perhaps even her very existence were considered priceless by those who sought her. Jonah realized the absurdity. They had sold her for 2 credits, yet she was worth more than any treasure in the galaxy. He began preparing. He reinforced his cabin, setting traps around the perimeter. He stocked supplies, sharpened tools, and trained both himself and Lyra in the ways of survival. They ran drills, moving silently through the forest, testing their reactions to imaginary threats. Jonah was amazed at Lyra's adaptability. She could anticipate danger in ways he could not, but he added his own human ingenuity, knowledge of the land, creative thinking, and bold, unpredictable action. Together, they were becoming a formidable team. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the trees, painting the forest in shades of gold and orange, Jonah and Lyra sat by the river near the cabin. The water reflected their faces, human and alien, side by side. Jonah spoke softly, almost to himself. "You know, Lyra, most people would have ignored you. Or worse, I can't explain why I bought you, but I did. And now I don't regret it. You've changed everything. Lyra's eyes glimmered, and she leaned closer, resting a hand lightly on his arm. Jonah felt the warmth again, a silent affirmation that they were in this together. Suddenly, the forest shivered with movement. Jonah's instincts kicked in. He grabbed his axe, and Lyra positioned herself beside him, eyes glowing faintly. From the tree line, shadows moved, figures creeping through the trees with weapons, scanning for any sign of Lyra. "They're back," Jonah muttered. Lyra did not hesitate. She raised a hand, and the forest seemed to respond. Birds scattered, small animals darted into hiding, and the shadows faltered. Jonah realized that Lyra's abilities were subtle but powerful, a combination of perception, instinct, and perhaps something beyond natural law. The aliens advanced cautiously, but Jonah's traps slowed them. Logs set to roll, pits hidden beneath leaves, tripwires that rang loudly through the forest. Each move Jonah made was simple, practical, human. But combined with Lyra's awareness, they were terrifyingly effective. The aliens retreated once again, but Jonah knew it was only temporary. He turned to Lyra. "We can't stay here forever," he said. "They'll keep coming. But wherever we go, we survive. Humans survive. That's what we do best." Lyra nodded slowly. Her eyes met his, and Jonah felt the silent weight of understanding. Together, they would face whatever came next. That night, Jonah lay awake, thinking about the chain of events that had begun with 2 credits. The forest was quiet, but he knew it would not stay that way. Somewhere out there, powerful forces were tracking Lyra, unaware that a simple human lumberjack and a mysterious alien woman had become a team capable of outsmarting even the most advanced hunters. Jonah smiled faintly, a spark of determination lighting his eyes. He had always known humans were resilient, clever, and brave. But now, with Lyra beside him, he realized just how unstoppable they could be together. Tomorrow, he would teach her more about the forest, about traps, about survival. He would continue to learn from her, her abilities, her instincts, and her knowledge of things far beyond human understanding. And together, they would prepare for the inevitable confrontation. Jonah did not yet know the full truth about Lyra. He did not know why she was so valuable, why she had been sold for 2 credits, or how far-reaching the forces against her truly were. But he did know this: they were no longer alone. And humans, even the simplest ones, never gave up. As the fire burned low and the night deepened, Jonah drifted into a restless sleep. In his dreams, he saw the forest stretching infinitely, the stars above spinning in strange patterns, and a golden-eyed figure standing beside him. And he knew, in that quiet human way, that the future, however dangerous or unknown, was theirs to face together. The days grew longer in the forest. The sun rose slowly over the trees, casting golden streaks through the leaves. Jonah woke before dawn, as he always did, and found Lyra already awake. She was sitting on the cabin steps, her golden eyes fixed on the horizon. Jonah could sense her alertness. Every sound, every movement in the forest captured by her sharp senses. "Boarding," he said softly, not wanting to startle her. Lyra turned her head slightly and gave a small nod. No words, only presence. In her silence, there was understanding. In her gaze, there was a knowledge of the world he had never seen. And in some strange way, it made him feel less alone. They had developed a routine over the past week. Jonah taught Lyra how to chop wood efficiently, how to track animals, and how to set up simple traps to protect the cabin. But she also taught him things he could not explain. She could sense the subtle shifts in the forest, the slight rustle of a predator hiding behind a tree, the gentle trembling of the ground as creatures moved unseen. She could read the signs of nature in a way Jonah never could. "You notice things I can't," Jonah said one afternoon, watching her lean over a fallen log, touching the bark lightly. "It's amazing." Lyra looked up at him. She raised a hand and drew a small, glowing symbol in the dirt. Jonah had seen it before, the strange signs she made with her fingers. He still did not understand them, but the message was clear. She was teaching him to see as she saw. Their bond grew quietly, forged in the rhythm of survival. Jonah found himself talking to her as if she were human, and she responded in her own way. Small gestures, shared glances, and the faint hums that sometimes escaped her lips. They were learning each other, learning to trust each other. But the forest was not as quiet as it seemed. One morning, Jonah heard a distant humming, low and mechanical, unlike anything natural. He stopped chopping wood and listened carefully. The sound grew louder, a faint vibration in the earth. He frowned. "Something's coming," he whispered. Lyra's eyes narrowed. She stood silently, sensing the same vibrations. Jonah knew she could feel things humans could not. Yet another reminder that she was far more than ordinary. "Get ready," he said quietly. "We don't know what it is, but we'll handle it." They moved to the clearing near the cabin. Jonah had prepared traps, pits hidden under leaves, logs balanced to roll, tripwires tied to clanging metal. He had spent hours planning for this very moment, and now he hoped they would be enough. The source of the noise soon became clear. A small fleet of alien scouts, sleek and silent, moved through the trees. Their glowing eyes scanned the forest, and their weapons hummed faintly in the light. Jonah felt a surge of fear, but also determination. "Stay close," he whispered to Lyra. The aliens paused, sensing something different. Then, as Jonah had hoped, they triggered one of the traps. A log rolled down a slope, clanging loudly. The aliens faltered, confused by the sudden obstruction. Jonah seized the moment. He ran toward them, shouting, swinging his axe. It was not just brute strength. It was human courage, unpredictability, and sheer will. Lyra moved beside him, faster than he expected. She gestured toward the trees, and the forest seemed to respond. Birds scattered, small animals darted from the underbrush, and even the wind seemed to shift to obscure their movements. Jonah realized that together they were a force no alien expected. Human ingenuity combined with Lyra's extraordinary abilities. The scouts recovered quickly, firing strange energy weapons. Jonah ducked behind a tree, feeling the heat of a beam narrowly missing him. Lyra raised her hands, and a faint ripple passed through the air. The energy beams bent slightly, as if repelled by an invisible shield. Jonah stared in disbelief. He had never seen anything like it. Lyra's abilities were subtle but effective. "You can do it," Jonah muttered, more to himself than to her. "We can do this." Lyra responded with a quick nod, then moved like a shadow, weaving between trees, her movements fluid and precise. She disarmed one scout silently, knocking them unconscious before the others could react. Jonah watched, learning from her grace and speed. He realized that her abilities were not magic. They were strategy, perception, and perfect timing. The battle continued through the forest, each side testing the other. Jonah's traps slowed the aliens, forcing them into predictable paths. Lyra anticipated their moves, guiding Jonah's attacks and counterattacks. Slowly, they began to gain the upper hand. Finally, the remaining scouts fled, disappearing into the dense trees. Jonah lowered his axe, breathing heavily. Lyra stood beside him, eyes glowing faintly in the fading light. They had survived, not because of raw strength, but because of teamwork, intelligence, and adaptability. Jonah looked at her, amazed. You're incredible, he said. We make a good team. Lyra tilted her head slightly, a gesture of acknowledgement. It was more than thanks. It was understanding, trust, and perhaps even admiration. Jonah felt a warmth in his chest he had not felt in years. He realized that this bond was more than survival. It was connection, respect, and friendship. Over the next few days, they prepared for the inevitable return of the alien faction. Jonah reinforced the cabin, setting traps in new locations, and studied the forest for advantages. Lyra taught him to read subtle signs, the movement of leaves, the direction of wind, the shifts in animal behavior. Jonah learned quickly, his human intuition blending with her enhanced perception. At night, they sat by the fire, sharing quiet moments. Jonah told her stories of his life, of human worlds and the simple joys of survival. Lyra listened, sometimes responding with gestures or the faint hums that seemed almost musical. Jonah began to see her not just as a mysterious alien, but as someone who had survived unimaginable danger, someone who deserved freedom and respect. One evening a storm rolled in. Rain pounded the cabin, wind tore through the trees, and lightning flashed across the sky. Jonah secured the windows and doors, but the storm could not hide the danger approaching. In the distance, the faint hum of alien ships echoed above the forest. "They're coming," Jonah said, his voice calm but firm. "And next time they won't hesitate." Lyra's eyes glowed softly. She stepped closer, placing a hand on Jonah's shoulder. He felt the warmth and strength in her touch, a silent promise that they would face whatever came. Jonah realized that they were no longer alone in the forest. Together they could withstand anything. The storm raged through the night, but inside the cabin, they prepared. Tools were sharpened, traps double-checked, and weapons ready. Jonah knew that the battle ahead would test them, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally. He also knew one undeniable truth: humans never give up, and together with Lyra they could outsmart anyone, anywhere. By morning the forest was soaked, but the sun broke through the clouds. Jonah and Lyra surveyed their surroundings, alert and ready. The alien scouts had returned, but this time, Jonah felt no fear. They had survived once, and they would survive again. He glanced at Lyra. "Whatever comes, we face it together," he said. Her eyes met his, golden and steady. Jonah felt a surge of confidence. He realized that the lonely lumberjack and the mysterious alien woman had become a force even the galaxy would underestimate. And in that moment, Jonah knew that life as he had known it was over. His quiet days of chopping wood and listening to the wind were gone. He had stepped into something far larger, dangerous, thrilling, and full of possibilities. And he was ready. Because humans, even the simplest ones, were never truly alone, and never truly powerless. The forest was eerily silent that morning. Even the birds seemed to hold their breath. Jonah stood at the edge of a clearing, scanning the dense trees. His axe was in one hand, a small hunting knife in the other. Beside him, Lyra crouched lightly, her golden eyes glowing faintly, scanning every shadow. "They're close," she said, her voice almost a whisper. Jonah nodded. He didn't need to ask who she meant. The alien faction that had been hunting her was coming back, and this time they would not leave without a fight. Jonah had spent days preparing. Every trap he had set around the cabin had been reinforced, and he had made new ones, blending them seamlessly into the forest floor. Pitfalls, tripwires, rolling logs, noise-making alarms. He had thought of everything a human could. And he had learned from Lyra how to read the forest, how to anticipate movement, and how to make the environment work for them.
Remember, he whispered, we fight smart.
They have weapons, yes, but we have the forest, our traps, and
human stubbornness. Lyra gave a slight nod, then moved to the edge of the trees, signaling Jonah to follow.
They advanced carefully, silent as shadows. The alien hunters were close, their faint hum of machinery growing louder. Jonah tightened his grip on the axe. He felt his pulse quicken, but beneath it all, a calm determination burned. Humans had survived worse, and he intended to prove it. Suddenly, a scout stepped into the clearing, and Jonah acted. He kicked a small log hidden under leaves, sending it rolling. The scout tripped, letting out a surprised cry. That was the signal. Lyra moved like a streak of gold, faster than Jonah could follow. She knocked another scout unconscious before they could raise an alarm. Jonah lunged forward, swinging his axe with precise force. He struck not with rage, but with calculation, knowing exactly where to hit to disable, not kill. The human's advantage, adaptability, intelligence, and sheer unpredictability was now on full display. The scouts faltered, confused by the simple but effective human tactics. More scouts emerged from the trees. Their weapons glowed, firing beams of energy. Jonah ducked behind a tree, feeling the heat of a blast scorch the bark inches from him. Lyra stepped forward, raising her hands. A faint ripple passed through the air, bending the energy beams slightly away from them. Jonah blinked. He had seen her do it before, but this time, in the heat of battle, it was extraordinary. "You can do it," Jonah shouted to her. "We're not done yet." Lyra's eyes glowed brighter. She moved through the trees like a shadow, striking with precision. One by one, the scouts fell, tripped, or were incapacitated. Jonah followed, using his knowledge of the forest to maneuver, to block lines of fire, and to force the aliens into traps. Together, human cunning and alien abilities created a deadly combination no one expected. The lead alien, larger and more armored than the scouts, stepped forward. It was clear it was their commander. It raised its weapon, firing a concentrated beam at Jonah. He rolled aside, dodging the blast. The trees around him shivered from the energy, but he pressed forward, using every advantage the forest offered. Lyra darted to his side. Together, they planned a move. Jonah climbed a thick tree and cut a rope tied to a heavy log perched above. The log fell, crashing toward the commander. The alien raised its shield just in time, but the log's impact shook the ground, forcing it back. Jonah jumped down, running toward the alien, swinging his axe with a careful, human precision that stunned the creature. "You underestimate us," Jonah said, his voice calm but full of authority. "Humans survive because we adapt, because we learn, and because we never give up." Lyra moved behind the commander, guiding it into a trap they had prepared together. The alien fell into a pit, disguised with leaves. Jonah leapt to the edge, holding the axe ready. The commander struggled, but the pit held. He looked at Lyra, and she gave a faint smile. They had won this round, but they both knew the battle was far from over. The remaining scouts retreated, disappearing into the forest. Jonah lowered his axe, breathing heavily, his heart still racing. Lyra stood beside him, her eyes glowing faintly, a mix of relief and quiet satisfaction in her expression. "We did it," Jonah said softly. "We survived." Lyra nodded, then touched his arm lightly. Jonah felt a warmth spread through him, a silent acknowledgement of their bond. He realized that this partnership, human courage and alien ability, was stronger than anything he had imagined. For hours, they secured the area, checking for traps, ensuring no hidden scouts remained. Jonah marveled at how calm Lyra remained, even in the midst of danger. Her intelligence and awareness were unparalleled, but it was her trust in him that truly amazed him. She had relied on a human, a simple lumberjack, to survive, and together they had triumphed. That night, they returned to the cabin. Jonah lit the fire, and they sat in quiet reflection. The forest was alive with distant sounds, but the immediate threat was gone. Jonah looked at Lyra. "You know," he said, "most people would never have thought a human and someone like you could survive this, but we did." Lyra tilted her head slightly, then reached out and touched his hand. Jonah felt the warmth again. He realized something profound. Human determination, combined with trust and teamwork, could overcome almost any obstacle. Over the next days, Jonah and Lyra trained together. He taught her human tactics, how to use tools, how to think unpredictably, how to exploit simple advantages. She taught him how to read the environment, sense danger, and anticipate movements far beyond human perception. They became a perfect team, a blend of human cunning and alien precision. Word began to spread in nearby settlements. Rumors of the human lumberjack who had bought a mysterious woman for 2 credits and survived against elite alien hunters circulated quietly, whispered in awe. Jonah did not seek recognition. He cared only for survival, for protecting Lyra, and for the knowledge that humans, ordinary, underestimated humans, could stand against forces far greater than themselves. One evening, as the sun set and painted the forest in shades of red and gold, Jonah and Lyra stood at the edge of the clearing. Jonah looked at the horizon. "They will return," he said quietly. "Stronger, smarter, more determined. But we'll be ready." Lyra's eyes met his. In them, Jonah saw trust, understanding, and something else, hope. He realized that together they had not only survived but built a bond strong enough to face anything. "You're more than a human," Lyra said softly, her voice melodic and strange. "You are." She paused, searching for words. Jonah shook his head with a faint smile. "Just a human," he said. "But humans have a way of surviving, and we never give up." Lyra nodded, and for the first time Jonah felt that they were equal partners, each bringing strengths the other could not match. He realized that this was the essence of humans: courage, adaptability, intelligence, and the ability to inspire trust and loyalty. The next morning Jonah woke early. Lyra was already awake, watching the forest. They had survived the first major attack, but the alien faction would not give up easily. Jonah knew the final confrontation would be coming soon, and when it did, he was determined to prove that even a simple human could outthink, outmaneuver, and outlast the most advanced alien forces. As he prepared supplies and checked traps one last time, Jonah thought about the journey that had started with 2 credits. He had bought a woman with a sack on her head, not knowing who she was or what she could do. Now, she was his partner, his friend, and his equal in a battle that had already tested their courage, intelligence, and resourcefulness. The forest hummed with life around them, oblivious to the human drama unfolding within it.